Imagine a life untethered from the tyranny of old age. Not a life impervious to all harm. Not an existence shielded from accident or disease. But one where the relentless, internal clock of decay simply stops accelerating. Picture a state where organisms cease to weaken and wither merely due to the passage of years. This is the intriguing and often misunderstood domain of biological immortality. It's a concept that beckons us to reconsider the very nature of life and death, to explore the biological frontiers where aging, as we know it, loosens its grip. This isn't about eternal life in the mythical sense, but something far more scientifically grounded, yet equally profound. A decoupling of mortality from chronological age. So, what precisely is biological immortality? Often termed bio-indefinite mortality, it describes a state where the rate of mortality due to senescence, that's the scientific term for aging, either becomes stable or actually decreases over time. Essentially, after a certain point, an organism doesn't become statistically more likely to die from old age just because it's another year or another decade older. This doesn't grant a free pass from death itself. A biological immortal being remains vulnerable to the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. They can succumb to injury, fall prey to predators, be felled by disease, perish from a lack of resources, or be wiped out by drastic changes in their environment. The key distinction is that they don't carry an ever-increasing internal countdown timer dictating their demise purely through aging. Various species, ranging from the seemingly simple, such as unicellular organisms, to the surprisingly complex, including some vertebrates, appear to achieve this remarkable state. Some exhibit it throughout their entire existence, while others may enter this phase of indefinite mortality only after reaching a certain maturity. However, the scientific narrative isn't entirely monolithic. This very definition of immortality has been put under the microscope, notably in texts like the Handbook of the Biology of Aging. The challenge arises from an observation known as the late-life mortality plateau. This idea suggests that for many species, while the increase in the rate of mortality might become negligible at extreme old ages, the actual mortality rate itself by that point can be exceptionally high. It's a subtle but important point. The climb might stop, but you could already be standing on a very precarious ledge. It bears repeating because the allure of the word immortality so easily conjures images of gods and mythical beings that biological immortality treads a far more grounded scientific path. This isn't about achieving eternal invincibility, a shield against any and all forms of destruction. No creature, as far as we know, is immune to a fatal injury, a potent poison, or the harsh realities of a collapsing ecosystem. Instead, biological immortality signifies something more precise and, in its own way, more radical: the effective cessation of senescence. Senescence, you'll recall, is that relentless, creeping process of cellular and physiological aging, the gradual decline that makes an older organism intrinsically more fragile, more susceptible to failure than its younger counterpart. In organisms deemed biologically immortal, this decline hits a plateau, or even reverses in some aspects. Their likelihood of dying in a given year simply does not increase merely because another year has passed. This stands in stark, profound contrast to the very majority of life, where each passing birthday statistically nudges the organism closer to its end, even in the absence of external threats. To appreciate what biologically immortal organisms achieve, we first have to understand what they're up against, the very forces that drive aging in the rest of us. For most living things, aging is an intricate, multifaceted process, a slow burn driven by an accumulation of insults at the cellular and molecular level. Think of it as a relentless siege. Our cells are constantly bombarded by oxidative stress, rogue molecules chipping away at their integrity. Genetic mutations can accumulate, errors in the blueprint that lead to malfunctioning parts. The protective caps on our chromosomes, the telomeres we discussed in the context of cells, naturally shorten with each division in most somatic cells, eventually signaling a halt to renewal. And beyond just telomeres, a broader spectrum of cellular damage, to proteins, to mitochondria, to the cleanup crews within our cells, builds up over time. Together, these processes act like a gathering storm, leading to the gradual deterioration of tissues, organs, and eventually the entire body's functions. This is the common fate, the slow decline and frailty. Biologically immortal organisms, however, are not passive victims in this drama. They possess unique, often astonishingly effective mechanisms to counteract these effects. They aren't just weathering the storm. They seem to have a way to repair the damage, to protect their genetic code with greater fidelity, or to maintain their telomeres, effectively resetting their biological clocks or preventing them from winding down in the first place. They are the outliers, the exceptions that offer tantalizing clues into the very nature of longevity and perhaps one day how to influence it. Within the world of biology, when scientists speak of immortal cells, they're referring to something quite particular. It's not about cells that can survive any assault, but rather cells that have escaped a fundamental biological clock known as the Hayflick limit. Think of this limit as a pre-programmed number of divisions a normal, healthy cell is allotted. Once it reaches that number, due to factors like accumulated DNA damage or the shortening of protective caps on our chromosomes called telomeres, the cell simply stops dividing. It enters a state of senescence, or sometimes self-destructs. This understanding wasn't always the case. Decades ago, the prevailing hypothesis, championed by figures like Alexis Carrel, was that all normal somatic cells, the regular cells making up our bodies, were inherently immortal, and that any observed limits were due to culture conditions. It was Leonard Hayflick's work in the 1960s that overturned this, demonstrating that normal cells do indeed have a finite lifespan. The term immortalization in a cellular context was first pinned to a rather notorious type of cell, the cancer cell. Scientists discovered that many cancer cells had found a way to cheat this Hayflick limit. One of their key tricks involves an enzyme known as telomerase. Remember those protective telomere caps on chromosomes? They naturally shorten with each cell division. Telomerase can rebuild these caps, effectively resetting the clock and allowing cells to divide indefinitely, sidestepping the programmed cell death, or apoptosis that would normally cull aging or damaged cells. Perhaps the most famous or infamous example of an immortal cell is the HeLa line. These are cancer cells taken from a woman named Henrietta Lacks in 1951 without her full consent, a story in itself that has raised profound ethical discussions. What made HeLa cells extraordinary was their relentless ability to divide and thrive in culture, long after Henrietta Lacks herself had passed away. They became and remain a cornerstone of biological research, contributing to monumental achievements like the development of the polio vaccine, breakthroughs in understanding sex hormone steroids, and insights into cell metabolism. Other lines, like Jurkat cells, derived from a childhood leukemia, also serve as a vital, endless dividing tools in labs worldwide. But cancer cells aren't the only cellular entities that dance with this kind of immortality. Embryonic stem cells, the pluripotent cells that can give rise to any other cell type in the body, possesses a natural capacity for indefinite self-renewal. So too do germ cells, the sperm and egg cells that carry genetic information across generations. In a very real sense, these cells are the lineage of life itself, a continuous, theoretically immortal chain. Beyond these naturally occurring immortal cells, scientists have also figured out how to artificially induce immortality in cell lines for research. This can involve introducing specific genes, often viral ones like the large T antigen from SV40, or by manipulating oncogenes and tumor suppressor genes to override the normal cellular senescence pathways. These engineered immortal cell lines are invaluable for studying complex biological processes, but they also carry the echo of the very mechanisms that make cancer so formidable. This cellular immortality then is a double-edged sword, a vital tool for research and a glimpse into the mechanisms of life's continuity, but also a reflection of the uncontrolled proliferation that defines one of our most challenging diseases. Now let's venture out into the wild, into the labs, and into the oceans, to meet some of the living embodiments of this extraordinary phenomenon. Prepare to meet a cast of characters from the natural world that seem to play by a different set of rules. Creatures that offer us tantalizing glimpses into what it means to escape, or at least significantly delay, the grip of senescence. Perhaps no creature has captured the imaginations and discussions of biological immortality quite like the immortal jellyfish. I'm going to put its name on the screen. Most of these creatures, I'm going to put their names on the screen because I cannot fucking pronounce these, dude. These names are crazy. They're in Latin, I'm pretty sure. I can't pronounce them. I don't feel like looking them up. You're just going to have to deal with that. Here's the name. Bah, right there. Whoosh. This tiny hydrozoan, barely reaching 5 millimeters across, possesses a truly astonishing survival mechanism. When faced with environmental stress, physical damage, or even the brink of starvation after reproducing, it doesn't just die. Instead, it can perform a biological miracle. It reverts. Cells that once formed its bell and tentacles undergo a process called transdifferentiation, transforming back into their earliest stage, a cyst-like structure, which then settles and grows into a new polyp colony, essentially restarting its life cycle from scratch. Imagine being able to, when faced with old age or mortal peril, hit a reset button and begin life anew as an infant, carrying the experience of your past life within your very cells. This cycle from jellyfish to polyp and back to jellyfish can apparently repeat indefinitely, earning the immortal jellyfish its famous moniker. Recent genomic studies have begun to unravel the molecular secrets behind this rejuvenation, pointing to sophisticated DNA replication and repair mechanisms, and a potent stem cell renewal capacity. Originating in the Caribbean, these tiny immortals have now spread across the world's oceans, endlessly cycling through their unique dance of life, death, and rebirth. And they're not entirely alone. Similar feats have been observed in other hydrozoans and even some scyphozoan jellyfish and comb jellies, hinting that this remarkable strategy might be more widespread than once thought. Then there are the lobsters, those armored denizens of the deep often popularly, though somewhat inaccurately, heralded as immortal. The truth is more nuanced, but no less fascinating. Research suggests that lobsters don't exhibit many of the typical signs of aging. They don't seem to slow down, weaken, or lose fertility as they get older. In fact, older, larger lobsters can be even more fertile than their younger counterparts. Part of their secret may lie in the enzyme telomerase. As we've discussed, this enzyme helps to repair and maintain the protective telomere caps at the end of chromosomes. While in most vertebrates, telomerase actively is largely restricted to the embryonic stages, lobsters express it throughout most of their tissues even as adults. This is strongly linked to their apparent ability to avoid cellular senescence. They just keep growing. However, this continuous growth is also their Achilles heel. Lobsters grow by molting, shedding their old, hard exoskeleton and forming a new, larger one. This process requires an immense amount of energy. The larger the lobster, the more energy the molt demands. Eventually, an aging lobster, despite its cellular resilience, may simply die from exhaustion during a particularly arduous molt, or its shell may become damaged or infected if it stops molting altogether. So while they don't die of old age in the way humans do, their life isn't endless. The European lobster, for instance, has an average lifespan of around 31 years for males and 54 for females. Impressive, but not eternal. For a truly mind-bending example of biological resilience, we turn to the hydra. These small freshwater polyps, relatives of jellyfish and corals, are masters of regeneration. Cut a hydra into pieces and each piece can regenerate into a complete new individual. This incredible ability is thanks to a high proportion of potent stem cells that remain active throughout their lives, constantly replacing and renewing their tissues. Studies, some spanning several years, have shown that hydras do not exhibit any detectable increase in mortality with age. They seem to simply persist. They reach maturity in a matter of days and, under the right conditions, show no signs of senescence. While the exact mechanisms of how they maintain their telomeres and avoid the pitfalls of aging are still being fully elucidated, their continuous cellular division and regenerative prowess make them a prime candidate for true biological immortality at the organism level. Beyond these headliners, the natural world is peppered with other organisms that defy typical aging patterns. Consider the rough-eye rockfish, which can live for over 200 years, or the ocean quahog clam, with verified lifespans exceeding 500 years, silently chronicling centuries from the seabed. The red sea urchin can also live for a couple of hundred years, showing few signs of decline. Even some turtles, like Blanding's turtle and the eastern box turtle, exhibit what scientists term negligible senescence. The enigmatic Greenland shark, cruising the frigid Arctic waters, is one of the longest living vertebrates on Earth, with estimates suggesting lifespans between 250 to 500 years. Even in the microbial world, immortality takes different forms. Many unicellular organisms, like bacteria and yeast, do age, especially if they divide asymmetrically, where the parent cell retains older components. But for those that divide symmetrically, splitting perfectly into two identical rejuvenated daughter cells, biological immortality is possible under ideal growing conditions. Each division can be a fresh start. And then there's the planarian flatworms, champions of regeneration. These simple creatures can regrow any part of their body, including a completely new head. Asexual planarians, in particular, seem to possess an almost limitless regenerative capacity, fueled by a population of highly proliferative adult stem cells, allowing their clonal lines to be maintained for years, seemingly indefinitely. Each of these organisms, in its own unique way, challenges our understanding of aging. They're living laboratories, offering clues to the fundamental processes that govern life, longevity, and perhaps, one day, how we might learn to extend our own health spans. Okay, we've journeyed through the fascinating, sometimes bizarre world of organisms that seem to defy the aging process as we know it. From the endlessly cycling jellyfish to the remarkably resilient hydra and the ever-growing lobster. These natural wonders open up a universe of biological possibilities. But what if this wasn't just the domain of a select few creatures? What if biological immortality were a widespread phenomenon? Or more pointedly, what if humanity itself were to unlock this secret? The implications, as you might imagine, are vast and ripple through every aspect of life, society, and our very understanding of existence. Let's first consider the grand stage of our planet. Imagine a world where all organisms, or even just a significant portion of them, were biologically immortal. The intricate dance of life and death, the constant turnover that fuels ecosystems, would be fundamentally altered. Without the natural check of senescence, populations could soar, leading to unprecedented competition for resources. The delicate balance, sculpted by eons of evolution where death makes way for new life, could be thrown into disarray. Resource depletion might become the norm, and the very structure of food webs could transform in unpredictable ways. Of course, even nature's current roster of biologically immortal species doesn't exist in a vacuum, free from all constraints. They still face their ever-present realities of predation, disease, accidents, and the relentless pressure of environmental change. So, biological immortality isn't a ticket to ecological dominance, but rather a different strategy in the complex game of survival. When we turn the lens of biological immortality towards ourselves, towards humanity, the question becomes even more profound. Venturing deep into the realms of ethics and philosophy, the pursuit of significantly extended lifespans, or even a form of biological immortality for humans, isn't just a scientific challenge. It's a societal and existential one. Should we, as a species, even strive to achieve it? If we could halt or dramatically slow the aging process, what would that mean for human society? Consider the sheer numbers. A world where generations no longer gracefully cede the stage to new ones could face unimaginable social, economic, and political pressures. How would we manage resources, careers, or even family structures if people lived for centuries? What would become of our relationships, our ambitions, our sense of purpose if the horizon of finite life were radically expanded? Would love, commitment, or achievement hold the same meaning without the ticking clock that so often motivates us? And perhaps most fundamentally, how would such a development reshape our understanding of what it means to be human, our relationship with life and death itself? Death, for all its sorrow, provides a certain framework to our existence, influencing art, religion, and our deepest values. To remove it, or to push it indefinitely into the future, would be to embark on an entirely new chapter of the human experience, with consequences we can only begin to speculate upon. These aren't easy questions with simple answers. They are central to ongoing, often fervent debates in bioethics and philosophy, and increasingly, in the public square as science edges closer to understanding and potentially manipulating the aging process. They force us to confront not just what we can do, but what we should do and who we want to become. The truth is, the study of biologically immortal organisms isn't just a fascinating detour into the curiosities of nature. It's actively fueling innovation in medicine and biotechnology. Scientists are meticulously dissecting the genetic and molecular mechanisms that allow creatures like the hydra to regenerate flawlessly, or the immortal jellyfish to hit the reset button on its life cycle. The insights gleaned are more than just academic. They hold potential keys to addressing some of our most pressing health challenges. Consider, for instance, the ongoing research into telomeres and telomerase. Understanding how some organisms maintain their telomeres indefinitely has directly inspired investigations into therapies aimed at combating age-related diseases in humans. The idea isn't necessarily to make us live forever, but to potentially extend our health span, the period of life spent in good health, free from debilitating age-associated conditions. From slowing cellular degeneration to boosting tissue repair, the lessons learned from nature's masters of longevity are paving the way for novel therapeutic strategies. However, it's crucial to temper enthusiasm with a healthy dose of reality. While the progress is exciting, the prospect of replicating true biological immortality or even just radically deaccelerating aging in a complex organism like humans remains, for now, firmly in the realm of future aspiration, not immediate reality. The journey from understanding a mechanism in a jellyfish or a flatworm to safely and effectively applying it to human physiology is an incredibly long and winding one. And that journey is fraught with monumental challenges. The allure of halting or significantly slowing the aging process is undeniably powerful, a siren song that has echoed through human history. Yet, the path to achieving such a feat is barricaded by numerous, formidable obstacles. Firstly, there's the sheer complexity of human biology. We are vastly more intricate than a hydra or a single-celled yeast. Our bodies are a finely tuned orchestra of countless cellular processes, genetic interactions, and developmental pathways. Intervening in something as fundamental as aging without triggering a cascade of unforeseen and potentially harmful side effects is an extraordinarily delicate balancing act. Then, as we've touched upon, there are the profound ethical concerns that shadow this pursuit. Questions about access, societal disruption, and the very definition of a natural human life doesn't simply vanish once a scientific possibility emerges. They grow more urgent. And finally, there's the vast territory of unforeseen consequences. Tampering with deeply embedded biological processes honed by billions of years of evolution carries inherent risks. What might we unleash if we successfully uncoupled human life from its natural cycle of aging and renewal? The long-term ecological, social, and even psychological ramifications are largely unknown territory. So while the quest to understand and potentially harness the secrets of biological immortality continues to drive scientific discovery, it proceeds with a necessary blend of ambition, caution, and a deep respect for the intricate web of life. So, biological immortality, a concept that dances on the very edge of myth, yet is rooted in observable, often astounding realities of the natural world. It's rare, certainly, and frequently wrapped in misunderstanding, but it stands as a profound testament to the sheer ingenuity of nature and the boundless possibilities that science continues to unveil. From the astonishing life cycle of the immortal jellyfish, forever cycling between youth and maturity, to the relentless regeneration of the humble hydra. These organisms don't just bend the rules of life and death, they often seem to rewrite them entirely. They force us to question what we thought we knew about the limits of existence. While the dream of achieving true biological immortality for humans remains a distant, perhaps even unattainable horizon, the passionate study of these new ageless wonders is anything but a futile pursuit. It offers invaluable insights into the deepest mechanisms of aging, the secrets of regeneration, and the incredible resilience that life, in its myriad forms, can demonstrate. Ultimately, the quest to understand biological immortality does more than just push the boundaries of science. It reminds us of the intricate, often bewildering dance between time and existence itself. It's a fundamental mystery, one that continues to inspire our curiosity, challenge our understanding, and drive us to keep asking those big, captivating questions about the universe and our place within it. Thank you everyone for watching. My name's The Big Y. Don't forget to drop a like, and if you're new to the Why Not family, a sub. And I'll catch you guys in the next video.